Wherefore Series 2, Episode 4. The moon goes everywhere. Logically then, the man in the moon could go anywhere and probably should go everywhere. It's not that simple, of course. The man in the moon is a man, broadly speaking, but he is neither in nor on the moon. That is a cold and distant place, dusty and not especially habitable. The moon is not just the lump of rock obsessed with the earth, though. The moon is a place. It is a shifting of tides and light. It is the land of lunatics, moths and poets. It may be fair to call him the man in the moonlight, although he prefers to show up when the moon is behind clouds. There are practical reasons for this. He is the man who can draw down the moon, who can bring the essence of the moon to the poets, lunatics and broken-hearted lovers. For those of you who feel strongly about the moon as a feminine force or a goddess, then worry not. The moon is a vast realm with many aspects and inhabitants. As far as this story is concerned, a great deal of space exists for other stories. So it is that when the man in the moon goes all over the place, he does not go everywhere. He has habits, but there are no limitations on his movements so long as the moon is abroad. So when the weaver does not show up for the January full moon, the man in the moon goes back to Stroud in early February to look for her. He would only be able to see her from a distance if she was in the moonlight, but she is not. This strikes him as reasonable enough. The night is cold and they had not planned to meet. He walks the streets, hood pulled low over his brow to reduce the amount of light he gives off. He turns down his radiance as best he can. It is 11 p.m. and the streets are largely empty, which is as well. He does not think that the weaver has gone away. It still feels as though she is here, somehow. But at the same time, she is definitely not present. He can feel the threads of her old magic everywhere. She is woven into the fabric of the town. Try as he might, he can find nothing of her that seems recent or lively. This is old, tired magic, barely holding together in places. It worries him. He thinks back over recent conversations. The weaver herself has been fading for some time. Weavers were never meant to be solitary in this way, but the world is changing, and for whatever reasons, there are fewer of them. Everything is falling apart, and perhaps the absence of the weaver is part of that. For a while, the man in the moon has a go at being pragmatic about all of this. However, he is by nature also a lover, poet and lunatic, and he does not want the weaver to have fallen apart or faded away. The sound of his grief and frustration is mistaken for thunder rolling through the valleys by those who hear it. For 3 nights, the man in the moon searches Stroud for the weaver. He comes as soon as the moonlight touches the valleys and looks everywhere the moonlight uncovers. He walks in his humanish body and he follows the freshest threads, and still he does not find her. He calls for her with all his heart and soul, willing her to feel his concern through the many threads that she has woven. He refuses to believe that she would ignore him if she could hear. She might be difficult, but he has never known her to be deliberately cruel. Stroud has never before known this level of attention from the man in the moon. None of the town's poets can sleep during these 3 nights. They are compelled to write into the early hours of the morning in states of wild rapture and ecstatic despair, as words hemorrhage from their mouths, hands and pens. They write of love, loss and regret. The siren song of their soul hunger pours into the world, and for many of them, it is the first time they have seen the gaping maw of their own famished self. It is terrifying, but still they must write. There is comfort for the lunatics as the man in the moon walks the night streets. They see him and he acknowledges them. The madness is real. Everything they had feared and suspected is true. Their minds are alight with the pale insistence of conspiracy theories, Atlantis wisdom, and the weight of their past lives. There is, of course, dancing, drunken, half-remembered singing, anarchic ritual, and a kind of howling that encompasses agony and exaltation. All is in disarray for the lovers. The faithful find themselves pulled this way and that towards passions they had never allowed themselves to previously acknowledge. The unfaithful are shaken to the core by the urgent need to confess their sins and seek forgiveness. Gender identities crumble. Sexual preferences seem flimsy, uncertain ideas at best. Memories of long-lost beloveds and fleeting crushes rise up to unsettle and inspire in equal measure. No one sleeps. No one quite knows what they want anymore. Sanity tugs on the fine threads of its fetters and drifts towards the realm of the moon, pulled by this new tide as never before. The man in the moon barely notices this and cares nothing for it. He feels no connection with these people. He is not a deliberate Pied Piper. He does not mean to have them all dancing to his crazy tunes. He does not mean to lead them over any border or drive them out of their minds. All he wants is some signs of the Weaver. And there is no sign. He is not supposed to ask for help. This is one of the rules. Why it is one of the rules he does not know. For as long as he can remember, the man in the moon has considered who he is to be the task he performs. It is his job to be in the moonlight, to touch with magic the minds of those who are open to it. There is nothing personal for him except the Weaver, who is somehow an exception to the rules. He does not want things for himself, except, again, for the Weaver. For the first time, he questions exactly where those rules come from and finds that he does not know. They seem obvious, intrinsic, like gravity and drowning, but birds are not defined purely by gravity, and fish do not drown in water, and there are always exceptions. The man in the moon looks around at a town that seems devoid of life to him because the Weaver is not there. Fuck the rules, he mutters to the pavement. Then he pulls back the hood and allows himself to truly shine in all his magic and radiance. He throws back his head, flings his arms wide, and cries out with his whole being, "Help me!" And he knows, by the stirring and shimmering of the very air, that the universe is listening and giving his plea some serious thought.